Once upon a time, in a village called Umwaro, lived a widow called Ogadinma. It was late evening. Ogadinma, a widow for 2 years, was alone in her kitchen, behind her 3-room mud bungalow. She was cooking rich onubu soup as a treat to herself for working hard all day in her cassava farm. She stirred the bubbling soup with a long metal spoon, sniffing noisily the delicious aroma coming out of the pot. She dropped a little of the thick soup on her left palm and licked it up. "Delicious," she cried, smacking her lips and nodding her head in approval. "I'll be mad if Ojemba comes visiting this evening as usual. I want to enjoy this soup alone and in peace." Ojemba was her brother-in-law. Still holding the spoon in her hand and wondering whether to let the soup simmer for a minute or two longer, she heard a man clear his throat in front of her bungalow. She put the spoon inside the mortar and cocked her ears. The attention-drawing throat clearing disturbed the still evening air once again. She hissed loudly. "That must be Ojemba," she said, and covered the soup pot. Her appetite flew away like a disturbed bird. Only the week before, Ojemba had asked her to marry him, to become his third wife. This turn of events had begun to disturb her greatly, in spite of her carefree nature. She did not want to marry him, but she was afraid to tell him so. She usually spoke her mind without bothering about the consequences, and didn't know how to blunt the sharp edges of her remarks. But in dealing with Ojemba, she had to be careful about what to say to him and how to say it. He was an insidious man who didn't take kindly to any words or actions he felt were humiliating to him, and he would harm her and her 2 teenage sons if she refused his proposal in a way he found humiliating. His daily evening visits, which began 3 weeks before, were already annoying to her because of his actions and utterances during these visits. And now there was this new dimension of pestering her to marrying him and demanding an immediate commitment from her. Unable to figure out how to deal with this sensitive issue, she had come to dread the visits as her people dreaded the village deity. "Are you there, Ogadinma?" Ojemba asked, walking past the house. Ogadinma hissed a long and prolonged hiss like an enraged snake. "Of course you know I am," she muttered. Ojemba shuffled towards the kitchen. "I could smell that soup from miles away," he said. He fetched himself a back chair from the bungalow and placing it close to her, he sat down. "It's onubu soup, isn't it?" he concluded aloud. "No, it's rice I'm cooking," Ogadinma said sarcastically. Ojemba laughed. "I know it's onubu soup, and that's the very soup I want to eat tonight." "They will bury you with onubu soup," Ogadinma muttered to herself. She took the pot of soup out of the fire and placed the spoon between the pot and its lid to allow the steam to escape. "What did you say, Ogadi?" "Nothing," Ogadi responded. Ogadi put a medium-sized iron pot on the fire and poured some water into it to begin to cook the cassava, that is the fufu. "Of course, you said something, Ogadi. I'm not deaf. I wasn't talking to you, but there are only the 2 of us here." "I was talking to myself," Ogadi said. "I see," Ojemba said. "I hope there is enough dry fish in that soup." Ogadi wanted to ask him how many baskets of fish he had given her, but she knew better. Instead, she said, "I don't have money, and dry fish cost a lot of money these days." "If you agree to be my wife, I will overwhelm you with fish," Ojemba said. "How much do you give your wives?" Ogadi asked under her breath. "What did you say?" Ojemba asked. "Just talking to myself." "That's bad habit, Ogadi." Ogadi continued quietly with her cooking. She pounded the raw cassava paste, molded it into balls, and dropped the balls into the boiling water. She poked the fire, went back to the kitchen for more firewood, and increased the heat under the pot. Then she sat down on a low stool to rest while waiting for the cassava to be ready for pounding. She glanced at Ojemba through the corner of her eyes. He has dozed off and was snoring softly. She sighed. She had tried many tricks to stop him from coming to eat dinner in her house every evening. One evening, she had deliberately oversalted the soup, and on another evening, she had added so much pepper in the soup that as she ate the meal, her tongue burned, her eyes watered, and her nose ran as if she had a cold. On each of these occasions, Ojemba had eaten the meal without complaining, and after that, he had continued his late evening visits. Perhaps he knew the poor cooking was deliberate. The sound of the pestle eating the fufu in the mortar woke Ojemba up. He rubbed his eyes. "That fufu is taking you ages to cook," he said. "I hope you have enough of it to fill these valleys in my body." Ogadi eyed him angrily. He had a large appetite and nasty habits. After overloading his stomach with food, he will belch in a most annoying fashion, and soon after he will fall asleep in his chair, snoring loudly and farting continuously until she woke him up and asked him to go home. Ojemba said, "I don't like any of my wives the way I like you, Ogadi. I know that. I'll protect you if you become my wife. I'll give you whatever you want." Ogadi grunted and continued with her pounding. "It's true, Ogadi. I like you very much. Oh, don't you believe me?" Ogadi remained silent. She did not believe him. She was born and bred in the village and knew the tactics of many polygamous men in the community. When he took a new wife, he would treat her like his idol, give her the lion's share of his spoils and harvest, take her and her alone to ceremonies where large quantities of foods were served, and spoil her with gifts. All these privileges ended for this beloved as soon as he got himself another idol. Ojemba said, "Ogadi, you must give me an answer to my question tonight. I cannot wait any longer. Other women will jump at my offer. I can't really understand you." Ogadi panicked. She knew Ojemba would not leave without an answer from her. She was yet to find a safe way of putting her answer across to him. She had hoped that her delay tactics would make Ojemba lose interest in her and leave her alone. Since her husband died, she had had one problem after another. Two of her husband's relations, including Ojemba, had encroached on her husband's farmlands. There was a bitter quarrel between her and her husband's cousin over a valued keg that her husband had lent to the cousin before he died. The cousin had claimed ownership of the keg, and to add to all this was Ojemba's proposal. Darkness had gently descended, making the new moon ineffective. Ogadi fetched 2 kerosene lamps from the bungalow and lit them. She took one to Ojemba and kept one for her use in dishing out the food. She was rinsing a plate when she heard the shuffling of feet in front of the house. She had sharp ears that had become sharper since she became the man of the house and the guard of the compound. "Ogadi, are you in?" A woman's voice called from the front of the house. Ogadi recognized the voice. "I am," she said. "Come right in." It was her neighbor, Ebere. Ebere walked into the kitchen holding a small plastic bowl in her left hand and a smoking oil lamp in the other. She was an old woman of 70 and lived alone. Her husband was dead and all her children had left home. "Oh, you are here, Ojemba," Ebere said, on noticing Ojemba. "A good evening to you." There was contempt in her voice. Ojemba grunted a reply and didn't inquire of her health as was the custom. "Can you spare me some palm oil, Ogadi?" Ebere asked. "Of course," Ogadi said. She took the bowl from Ebere, went into the house, and filled the bowl with palm oil and reappeared. "I hope this will do for you," she said, giving the bowl to Ebere. "I'm running short too." "This is more than enough," Ebere said. "I'm grateful. I must hurry back because I have pot on fire." She walked away. "I have never liked that woman," Ojemba said as soon as Ebere was out of earshot. "Why?" Ogadi asked, rinsing a bowl. "Too nosy," Ojemba said. "I don't think so," Ogadi said, straightening up. "Ogadi, come and see this." It was Ebere calling from the front of the house. "Wait a minute," Ogadi said. She put the bowl down and hurried to the front of the house where Ebere was waiting for her. "Why is Ojemba in your house every evening these days?" Ebere asked. "This handshaking is passing the elbow and is beginning to look like kidnapping. Does he want to marry you?" "Yes," Ogadi said quietly. "Marry him if you want to be in hellfire for the rest of your life. Marry him if you want to lose your son's share of family land to him. That's all I want to say for now. You don't tell a clever child to come out of the hot sun." "I don't want to marry him," Ogadi said. "Then tell him. Tell him so that he will leave you alone. You should tell him to stop coming to your house every evening. If he wants a third wife, there are many young girls in our village and beyond for him to choose from." "I'm afraid to tell him I don't want him," Ogadi said. "What are you afraid of?" Iberi asked. "You're a clever woman, Ogadi, and I've not known you to be a coward. You should know what to do. If I were you, I would tell him right away to leave me alone. Remember that it is procrastination that prevented the toad from growing a tail. I've said all that I want to say. Good night." She walked away without waiting for any other comments from Ogadi. Standing there enveloped in darkness, Ogadi felt as if a heavy basket of cassava was placed on her head. The dull pain went down from her head to her chest and then to her knees. She held her head in her hands as if to stop the pain. She must not let Ojemba intimidate her into marrying him, she told herself. She didn't like him a bit. He was selfish, high-handed, and untrustworthy. She knew that he beat his wives for the flimsiest of reasons. She herself had had enough battering from her late husband, enough to last her for the rest of her life. Why then should she marry another wife-beater? Then she remembered the many occasions when Ojemba's first wife had won her to leave Ojemba alone. "Marry him and I'll make you miserable," she had told her only the day before. Ogadi thought about her two teenage sons who were apprentice traders in Lagos. Women were not allowed to be custodians of family land. If she married Ojemba, he will automatically be the overseer of her husband's share of the family land until her sons came of age. He will appropriate the land or change the boundaries to his own advantage. Land was an important asset. Her sons could use their share of the family land as collateral for a loan to start their own businesses. They could even sell some to raise capital for their businesses. She shook her head. "No," she said under her breath. She must preserve her husband's share of the family land for her sons. She must not do anything that would deprive them from their inheritance. Ebere was right, Ogadi thought. The sooner she told Ojemba to leave her house, and the better it would be for her. And it must be tonight, she reminded herself. As she walked slowly and meditatively back to the kitchen, she had an idea. But that would be a ridiculous thing to do, she thought aloud, believing that the idea would not work. Back in the kitchen, she deliberately served Ojemba with a large amount of food. She wanted to keep him busy eating for a long time while she sorted herself out. As soon as Ojemba began to eat, she went to her bedroom and locked the door. She needed some time to herself, undisturbed, to put her plan into action. Minutes later, Ogadi emerged from the bedroom and headed for the kitchen to eat her dinner, after which she would talk to Ojemba. She was halfway between the house and the kitchen when she saw Ojemba's first wife, Nkechi, striding towards the kitchen. "Ogadi," Nkechi shouted, "I have warned you many times to stop using your food to snatch my husband from me." She strode to Ogadi and faced her squarely. She continued, "My husband has stopped eating my food, all because you have been using your food to control him, to bewitch him." "Mind your tongue, Nkechi," Ogadi said. "Where is that pot of soup you used to bewitch him?" Nkechi asked, walking towards the kitchen. Ogadi ran after her. Nkechi increased her speed, arrived at the kitchen first, grabbed the pot of soup and was about to turn it upside down when Ogadi ran to her and grasped the pot. The two women struggled for the possession of the pot. Ojemba stalked to the struggling women, snatched the pot from them, placed it behind him. "Have you gone mad, Nkechi?" he asked and slapped his wife 2 times on the cheeks. "Oh my God, my husband has blinded me," Nkechi yelled and ran towards the house. Ojemba strode towards his yelling wife. "Shut up or I'll kill you instantly," he shouted and began to beat his wife mercilessly. Ogadi went to help her fellow woman, and some of the blows meant from Nkechi landed on her own face. She tactically retreated. Nkechi yelled the more, "Is there no one around to save me? My husband wants to kill me. Ijere, Ude, are you at home? Come before I am killed. Come and save my life. I am dying." 2 men and 1 woman hurried into the compound and shortly after helped to bring a truce. They left, taking Nkechi with them. Ogadi sat on a low stool and gazed into space, her chin in her hands. She was breathing heavily. Her face was burning with the blows from Ojemba. She must act now or never. Ojemba said, standing in front of Ogadi, "You must tell me this night, Ogadi, whether you're going to become my wife or not." Ogadi hesitated. Some minutes ago, she has worked out a strategy and had convinced herself that it would work. Now she could not muster the courage to carry out her plan. She doubted the wisdom in what she had planned to do. She reconsidered Ojemba's proposal. She was still desirable, she thought. Ojemba was viral, and rumors had it that his virality was one of the things he used to keep his wives happy. She was lonely sometimes and could do with companionship. She could do with some financial help, with some help in her farming, with some support for her sons. She heaved a sigh. But what about the beatings, she asked herself, the rivalry with the other wives, common in polygamous family? What about the possibility of becoming a widow all over again, of going through the grief and deprivations, the horrible mourning rites? She shuddered. She said solemnly, Ojemba, I cannot be your wife even if I want to. Why? Asked Ojemba, fixing his gaze at Ogadi. Are you afraid of Nkechi? You shouldn't be. She's under my control. It's not because of her, Ogadi said. Then what's your reason for refusing me? It's for your own good, Ojemba, that I don't become your wife. What do you mean by for my own good? I have a disease and I don't want to pass it on to you, Ogadi whispered as if someone else could hear her. What disease is that? Ojemba asked with a tinge of anger in his voice. Ogadi lowered her voice. I don't know what it is called. I don't know of anybody who has suffered from this disease before. The doctor called it a strange disease or something like that. I didn't quite understand him. Is this a joke, Ogadi? Ojemba asked. You know I hate jokes. His voice carried some threat in it. Ogadi said, it is not a joke. I'm dead serious. Come with me into the main house and I will show you what I mean. She stood up. Ojemba hesitated. Come, follow me. Ogadi began to walk towards the house. Ojemba followed her into the house. See, Ogadi said, removing her wrapper and standing stark naked in front of Ojemba. Raising the lamp in her hand up to her middle, she said, see the white patches all over me here. She touched her pubic area. The doctor said that any man who touches me gets the disease, and the disease is worst for men. Ojemba quickly stepped backwards away from Ogadi. Did the doctor say you can get the disease by eating food cooked by the person suffering from it? He asked. Knowing that Ojemba dreaded being ill and couldn't endure even a headache, Ogadi said, perhaps you could get it from food. I didn't ask the doctor whether you could or not. Ojemba hurried out of the house without saying good night. Ogadi smiled broadly to herself as soon as Ojemba's footsteps died away. The white spots over her belly and pubic area had done the job of sending him away for good. The white stuff had come from a bottle that her niece, who was studying at a university, had left behind after spending some days in her house. She had seen her niece use the white stuff to cover a blot on a paper while she was writing. Out of curiosity, she had put the stuff on her nail only to discover that it was difficult to rub off as the gum from a pear tree. She didn't know her simple plan would work. She had been racking her brain for a more complex or violent strategy. As her people would say, what she was looking for in that faraway town of Sokoto was right here in her pocket. As she left the house for the kitchen, she knew that there would be no need for her to worry about being ostracized by the villagers for having a strange disease. Although Ojemba had paraded himself as fearless and clever, he would not ridicule himself by telling people about his encounter with her. That is the end of the story. So what is the moral of this story? This story, told by Ifeoma Okoye, is to make us aware of some of the problems widows face in eastern Nigeria in particular, and in Africa and some other parts of the world in general. They often lose their inheritance to their in-laws because of the discriminatory laws and custom. They are sometimes forced to marry their husband's brother. Widows can do something by themselves to solve some of their problems. Sometimes the solutions to our problems are just around the corner, waiting to be discovered. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and expect wonderful stories coming up in our next videos. Bye.